Why can't you tell me? I need to know.
What's up guys, my name is Vilu and in this video I want to show you how you can make a basic Stutter House track. So what's Stutter House? Well, it's a deviation of house, I guess, and it came to my mind over the last year where a lot of artists actually had their little breakthrough with this kind of genre. So artists like Bunt, Laverne, or Vision V, they all made some kind of stutter house and had a lot of success with it. So in this video I wanna break down a little stutter house track I've made, so let's go. Alright, so for this project specifically I try to use as much of the Ableton stock plugins as possible, except for Serum because I can't really live without it. So the way I started this one was by creating these chords here. So for Stutter House, you generally want something a little bit more up-tempo, like 130 BPM, but I've also seen people like Laverne, who is more like a chill Stutter House dude. I think he writes his songs in 122 BPM, so there isn't really that kind of strict rule. To bring out a little bit more of that character of this piano, I added some effects like saturation. Brings up the volume as well quite a bit. This EQ here. A compressor and another EQ. I then went on to layer it with something to fill up the rest of the space. I found this wide room pad of the Ableton wavetable synth. It sounds like this. I cut out some of those lows. In addition, I added this respace just to give it a little bit of that underneath thickness. And together I had this chord progression. And then I thought like, man, I need a vocal. So I tried creating one with one of these AI tools out there. And it sounds like this.
Why can't you tell me if you really love me? I need to know. I need to know.
And this was like okay sounding, I guess, but I didn't really like it that much, so I asked a friend of mine, Kiwi, to sing in this line, and she sent me this.
Why can't you tell me if you really love me?
And without any effects, it would sound like this.
Why can't you tell me?
So what I did here was I applied a lot of compression first.
Why can't you tell me?
To flatten out the vocal a little bit. I even added some more compression with this OTT.
Why can't you tell me?
I find that OTTs generally compress it a lot more and also add that high-end spark. And then I've added a reverb and a delay to the signal.
Why can't you tell me?
And at this point it was still a little bit muddy, so I added this EQ here to cut out these unwanted low frequencies.
Why can't you tell me?
After processing this vocal here, I carved out a little slice of it, this one. And I applied this stutter effect. So all that this stutter effect is basically just a volume automation, like an LFO on the volume. And I've created this using the Serum FX plugin. So if you've bought Serum, you can also download this plugin with it. And it's just like Serum, but it covers only the effects section of Serum. But you can also route in your audio and automate, for example, the volume like I did here. And I just created this little shape here and put it on 1/8. You can play around with this. But it should have a similar shape to this to create this stutter effect. Now this is one way to create this effect, but you can of course also do this with the Ableton stock plugins. It's just a little bit more work and it's not that accurate in my opinion. So the way you would do this with Ableton stock plugins is by loading in this auto pan, set the rate here to this beat sync option, increase the amount, turn down the phase, and here you can adjust the rate. And you can play around with the offset here. So this just shifts the start of this modulation. And by doing this, you can remove this click that sometimes occurs in the beginning. But I prefer to use the Serum FX plugin for this or any other volume shaping plugin like Shaperbox. I then rendered out this layer here and added a bunch of reverb. So without anything, it would sound just like the layer on top. But with the reverb, some OTT again, and this wibble effect. So this wibble effect, I've got to be honest, I've never seen this before creating this track. But it can create some crazy wobbles and pitch stuff, I don't know. So I only turned it up a little bit. Because otherwise you would get a lot of this phasing wobble thing in the background, which I didn't quite like. I also reversed this stutter to create a little effect. And I also took out a chop of the sample and applied a lot of reverb and then reversed it to create this effect. It's basically a vocal sweep. To fill up the space a little bit more, I added this ambience here. And all this is the piano playing the bottom notes. But just with a ton of reverb to put it in the back of the mix. And together with this little snippet here of our main vocal, this creates the intro to our track.
Why can't you
And you could also hear that here I am automating the rate of the stutter effect. Right, so moving on to the verse / buildup. Now the vocal shines and is played all the way through.
Why can't you tell me if you really love me?
I put these stutter chops here in the background to make space for the main vocal. And the chords basically just stay the same as well as the ambience. So nothing crazy going on here. In the second part of this section, I'm adding this hi-hat loop. And just before the drop, I've added this reverse stutter again. Altogether, it sounds like this.
Why can't you tell me if you really love me? I need to know. I need to know. I need to.
All right, so now we are already in the drop. So to create this stutter vocal, it was a little bit challenging because I didn't have a long tail in the vocal, right? So when I play the original vocal,
I need to know.
It stops here, right? So I can't really put any of this stutter effect here because the vocal just stops playing. So the way I created this was by just stretching out the last part of it a lot and then using the Complex Pro setting here with the formants down. And this on its own sounds pretty bad, but if you add like a stutter effect, it starts to sound like something at least. But if you have the chance and if you want to make like a very nice stutter track, I'd recommend recording vocals that actually have a long tail so you can work with that. So this is the main layer. I added this vocal synth layer here. And this is just the unison stacking preset with some changes to it. Then I've also added this reverb layer. And for the last part of the drop, I added a lower layer as well. All the layers together sound like this. The drums are pretty simple as well, so they sound like this. And they consist out of this kick, this hi-hat loop, another hi-hat loop, and this little fills that also consist out of hi-hats. As the drop progresses, I'm actually adding even more drums, like this clap here, and this white noise hi-hat. And this is just a patch in Serum where I'm also automating the volume or the shape of the volume to create a little bit more dynamic hi-hat. And because I've created these drums all by myself with this track in mind, I didn't really had to process them a lot. I just added some saturation and soft clipping here on the group and then a little bit of compression. So without it, it'd sound like this. It gives it just a little bit more power. So now we've got the vocals and the drums. And the last main element for this drop are the chords, of course. So they sound like this. And they consist out of this noisy pad here. The soft chords, which are played on the offbeat to give a little bit more rhythm to the track. These stutter chords, which actually follow the pattern of the vocal. And then after the first 8 bars, the piano from the intro comes in again. But this time I'm cutting out a little bit more of the low end and I'm also adding this reverb to put it a little bit more in the back of the mix. And then there's of course the bass playing underneath. I also wanted the bass to be stuttery in some kind of way, so I applied this LFO to the volume to create this, well, stutter effect. What's also interesting is that I added these pitch bends here. Which gives just a lot of texture to the bass. And these 4 elements, the vocals, the drums, the chords and the bass, make up the main part of the drop. To fill up the space now a little bit more, I've added this white noise at the beginning of every 8 bars. And I've also taken that ambience again. This time just 1 note of the piano and looped it and just put it in the background. Then I added this lead melody in the background here. And it just gets slowly filtered in until the last part of the drop where it can fully shine. create even more variation, I've also added this stutter from the intro, but this time in a drop with a filter on it. And here I've also added this stutter, but I pitched it up by 12 semitones. And I don't really know why, but I guess just to make it sound a little bit different. And then I'm just adding these vocal fills every 8 bars, just to keep the momentum going, to have some variation in the drop. First one sounds like this. What I did here was I pitched down the first chop. The second one stays the same, and the third one is actually being automated, like there's this little pitch bend here to create this funny effect. And for the second fill, I took the AI vocal and added these little chops here. And that's it again for this track. So if you wanna dive even deeper into this track and have a little closer look at all the elements, I've put a link in the description where you can get the project file. And of course, you can use all the samples and the serum patches and all that stuff for your own music, no problem. The only thing that you can't use for your own music are the main vocals, as these are not from me, but from my friend. So if you'd like to use these, please contact her, and I'm sure you will find some kind of agreement for that. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Let's hear the full track now.
Why can't you Why can't you tell me if you really